There's two types of translation. One is called formal equivalence. Formal equivalence is an approach that wants to take word-by-word translation and keep it as close to the sentence structure as possible with it still making sense. And so word-by-word influence or formal equivalence is like the King James Version, the New King James Version, the NASB translation. All three of these translations, the New King James is less so, but the King James and the NASB they're more word for word. They try to keep the words in the right order according to the original language, but it makes them hard to read. And if you've ever tried to read these translations, if you didn't grow up on them, you have to read each sentence and you have to kind of say, okay, wait, let me read that again. And because it's not in our language, in the King James, we don't speak King James English anymore. And in the case of the New American Standard Bible, which is an incredibly great study Bible, the word order makes it a little jumpy and a little jerky, a little difficult to read. The theological term that people use for that, it's a bit wooden. It's wooden. It's kind of clunky at times. Beautiful translations, fabulous. But because of the intent of the translators to try to keep everything as close to the original as possible, it makes it a little bit more challenging to read. Which is why if you look on websites about the age categories for different Bibles, the NASB and the King James Bible, you have to have like be in 13th year of education to be able to read it effectively, which means you're a post-high school graduate, which, there's nothing wrong with that. The other translations are referred to as dynamic equivalence. Translations like that are the NIV, the New International Version, the New English Bible. There's a whole bunch of translations that fall under that rubric as well. And they have made a decision in their translation, rather than going word for word, to go thought to thought. In other words, they're trying to communicate the entirety. They want to get the message across in a way where they're not violating the intent of the original autographs of the writers, but at the same time, not making it clunky. And so you'll find that some of these other translations are easier to read. And a new believer can pick it up and say, wow, I totally get this. This isn't hard to understand. But if you put a King James Bible in their hand or a New American Standard, it's a little more challenging to get there. But they're all good Bibles. I will say this about Bible translation, is that when I went to seminary, there's always a few discussions that people want to have over lunch. One of them is, should women be in ministry? That was one. Another one was, are we Calvinists or are we Arminians? That was another big one. And another one was Bible translation. And there were people that were so adamant that it was King James only, or essentially, I don't even know if you're alive. I don't know if you're going to hell. I don't know if you're saved. I mean, that was kind of the feel that you get in the conversation sometimes about translations. My answer to all this, by the way, the funny thing is that some of those people that were so adamant about translation were the least loving, least transformed people I've ever met. There was not a lot of love. There was not a lot of fruit. They were very adamant. It was like they were more excited about talking about King James Bible than about evangelizing or witnessing or discipling. They weren't doing any of those things, but they were on this hobby horse about it's King James. I want to announce, if anyone's mistaken or misunderstanding, I love the King James Bible. I think the King James Bible is one of the most awesome translations and the most awesome works of literary genius on the planet, the translation that we have in the King James Bible. I think the New King James is awesome. I think NIV is awesome. I think a lot of the translations have their purpose. Having said all that, let me share this. Every translation has a strength and a weakness, and it depends on where on the spectrum between formal equivalence and dynamic equivalence they find themselves. And if it's formal equivalent, their strength is that they're really trying to give you as pure a word as they can, but it's kind of jumpy and hard to read. And the dynamic equivalent's much easier to read, to apply to your life, but you have to realize that they're having to change some phrases, like having it in the belly is changed to, she was with child. And so those two dynamics between these two translation types is where you're going to find all of the translations that we have in our bookstores or online. They all fall within there somewhere in terms of their translation intention.